everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughan, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can join the movement at togetherindigital.com. All right. So all of us have been there. You go to conferences and events, and there are just moments that sort of stick with you well after the sessions are over. And for me, they were plentiful at the Content Marketing World conference this last year. But watching Melissa Liu come in and share, so I had to paint the picture. She's at Content Marketing World on the feature stage, which if any of you have been to this, it is a 3,000 person event. There are massive screens everywhere. There's pump up music playing for everyone. And she steps up onto the stage to accept the Project of the Year award for Salesblazer. And she didn't just share a polished success story. Instead, she pulled back the curtain on the messy and very honest journey of creating award-winning content. We all know that's the process, right? It's not always perfect, but her words of persistence beats resistance really hit home with me. And I felt like it was something that, our community and women everywhere that are listening to this truly need to know and hear time and time again. We need to be reminded. She is currently the Senior Director of Content Strategy at Salesforce. We are so excited to have her here on the Power Lounge to share her incredible background that has spanned the Los Angeles Times, ABC, and NPR. And she's here to share a very unvarnished truth about turning content in marketing setbacks into victories. So if you've ever felt stuck, or if you're wondering if you're the only one struggling on the project or at work or in general, this conversation is for you. I am so excited to have you with us here today, Melissa. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Amy. That was such a nice intro.
Oh, you're welcome. It's absolutely my pleasure. I love to kind of give everybody a chance to feel a little bit of love and get cozy here and just settle in for good conversations and honest conversations, because that's what we're really all about. And when you and I talked after your session, I so appreciate you being open, because I know it was probably a lot for you to jump on stage and do all of that and then be accosted and be like, be on my podcast right after. But you were so accepting, and I really do appreciate it.
Honestly, it was a little flattering. So that was my first
Good.
keynote, and
Uh-huh.
so I had no idea what to expect. So
Yeah.
to hear that someone enjoyed it, one person in the crowd at least enjoyed it, that felt really nice.
Absolutely. And you've had quite a journey. I'd love for some of our listeners to hear a little bit more about you and where you've come from. So from journalism into leading content strategy at Salesforce, what kind of drew you to make that transition from more traditional media and some of those places I mentioned before into kind of more digital content?
Yeah, so I was a journalist for about 10 years, a decade.
Mm,
And I went to school for journalism. That was my passion. I love to tell stories and kind of, to me, journalism is this community service, it's a public service that you're really kind of doing good in the world and like uncovering and
yeah.
telling the stories that need to be told. Um, Unfortunately, the business of journalism is quite difficult.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so after a decade in it, you try all the different roles and you kind of take a look at your life and you're like, okay, what is a life that I want to lead?
Hmm.
Is this kind of the balance that I'm looking for? I had reached a point of, I had gotten to leadership roles in newsrooms and felt like, oh, I accomplished a lot, but is this what I imagined?
Hmm.
And now that I've gotten here, is this what I actually wanted? And then
Yeah.
realize, I think it's time for a change. So then I luckily, have a couple friends who were like, hey, I've been working at this company for 5 years and I really love this company, it has great values, and it's really all about employees and growing their employees. Like, why don't you just look and see if there's any jobs that you might be interested in?
Hmm.
So I applied, and yeah, somehow got it. I don't know how. But obviously there
Because
were
you are
many other
talented.
interviews and rejections along the way, but
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, that's how I ended up at Salesforce and content
Uh,
marketing.
yeah, that's amazing. So it was just, did you kind of like set it in your resume without connections? Did you know people there? Like, what did that look like, that whole process?
Yeah, so obviously when you're making a career pivot, you kind of
Hmm.
have to reframe your resume
Yep.
to whatever that job description looks like. So for me, when I was applying to different types of roles, I basically went through my resume and looked at the job description and just synced it up. And I was like, how do
Yeah.
I paraphrase this so that I'm using similar language and similar words and just
Hmm.
putting it on my resume with the accomplishments that I have?
Yeah.
Um, so that was one thing I tried to do to kind of get through the algorithms of like getting your resume surfaced.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, unfortunately, you kind of the interview processes that I got through the furthest with tech companies, at least, came from referrals. So
Yeah.
like I had a couple friends that I reached out to on LinkedIn
Hmm.
or texted and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a new role. Looks like you work at this company. Would you be interested in referring me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, not words like that specifically,
Sure.
but and then also setting up informational interviews because there
Hmm.
might be roles that you think the job looks interesting, and then
Yep.
kind of talk to someone about the company culture and
Yeah.
what it's like to work there, and you're like, maybe that's not for me.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe not worth my time. I ask because this current job market is extremely flooded, especially with women who've kind of had a fallout from things within like the economy, the influence of AI on companies,
Yep.
and just in general, like, the way things have gone the last year or so. But I do think, and we have a lot of not just job seekers within the community, but like pivoters, right? Women, especially in digital, right? Because it's always evolving. And so I've known so many people who did not start in, like, how many people in this industry, especially our community, which our median age is like 35, 10 to 15
Yeah.
years of experience. Like, there was no such thing as like a digital marketing course at
Mhm.
school. And so you have to sort of it's not, I wouldn't call it necessarily even pivoting. I would say it's evolving. It's really just the mindset. And I love how you talked about looking at what you've done contextually and saying, how do I make it relevant to where I want to go? Because experience is still experience. It's all in how you're telling that story. And I just think it's so important for our job seekers and pivoters or volvers, all of us, to hear that and be reminded of those things, kind of given the times we're in. And the moment you were describing there, Melissa, is so how I felt when I got to like my title and the salary I thought would always make me like super satisfied. And I'm like, yay, this is it. I've made it.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling, I call it the feeling you have when you basically climb somebody else's mountain. You're like, wait, now that I'm here, where's that good feeling? Where's that sense
Yep.
of success and accomplishment? Like, I'm accomplished, but I don't feel gratified. I don't feel like this is the thing I was always meant to be doing. And then you're like, why did I just spend so many years climbing that mountain that wasn't even mine to begin with? But that's how we learn, right?
100%. Yeah.
This is how
You're
we
like
learn.
blinded by your goal, kind of like
Yes.
going straight down that path,
Hmm.
everything out of my way for me to get there. And then you
Hmm.
finally get there. You're like, wait, this wasn't what I imagined.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You goal blindness. Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
I like that term too. All right. So during your presentation, remember looking back in my notes and writing really big: persistence beats resistance. And that really stuck with me and some of the other folks around me. So it wasn't just me that enjoyed your talk.
Oh,
But I'm
thank you.
curious, one of the first things I wanted to ask you was like, okay, you could have just walked up and been like, we did this and then we did this and then and so just like sold the story as something kind of easy breezy. And instead you decided to share the struggle alongside the success. What inspired you to do that?
Uh, I didn't know the other way was an option. I
I
was
love
like,
it.
I was like, how do I tell a compelling story? And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, what's a hero's journey I could share?
Yeah.
And like, it's never interesting to hear someone start at the top and then keep staying at the top.
Right.
And that certainly wasn't reality in our
Mhm.
project anyways. So yeah, it's funny because I worked with a speaking coach
Mhm.
to go through and kind of like talk through what I was going to say.
Uh-huh.
And he was actually like, where the talk started from where what you saw on stage was literally changing up until the like hours
Oh my
before.
gosh. Not nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah, and the speaking coach basically was like, when he looked at my first version of it, he was like, "Why are you just like cutting yourself down the entire time?"
Mm, yeah.
And so, what you saw was like a more confident version of actually
Mhm.
what I started with. So that's interesting that you're like, "Oh, I really appreciated your vulnerability," because
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, don't want to see the mess before
The
that
OG. You don't see draft one. Maybe now I kind of do. But I would have to say kudos to your speaking coach because I will also say I've done a lot of speaking myself. I've gone through some like speaker coaching and things. And now I feel like I can see it when somebody has been coached and they can feel a little
Yeah.
overcoached. Tell your guy he did a great job outside of like bringing the right thing into your talk, and which is that confidence. I really love how like yeah, I love that you didn't sound overcoached to me at all. Like I feel like sometimes I can just be listening or watching someone on stage and I'm like, gosh, they've
Mm,
definitely been coached. You know what I mean?
mm.
You did not come across that way at all. It was still very genuine. And I think, kudos to him and to you for that.
Yeah, well, he's also a part-time therapist, so half the coaching felt like a
Ah,
therapy.
that's
Or he
great.
used to be a therapist.
That's amazing. Yeah, get this guy's number. I love
Yeah.
that. And then I think, and you said this before, and I think it came from, again, that bringing those strengths from one career path into the next. Storytelling, you were a journalist. You're like, what's the hook? What's interesting about
Yes.
everything was perfect and nothing went wrong or sideways? Like, there's nothing newsworthy about that, right?
Yep.
Um, so I'm kind of curious, with your background and experience kind of starting in journalism instead of going straight. We'll get to Salesblazer, I promise, folks. I'm curious what shaped your approach to storytelling.
Honestly, it's just practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you start off as a cub reporter, very limited experience,
Mm-hmm.
and you're constantly pitching stories to different editors, constantly saying this deserves to be in like this part of the newspaper, this deserves like this kind of treatment online. And over time, you do that enough, you get rejected enough, you kind of pick up, okay, why did I get rejected on this one? What notes did they have on this one? You
Mm-hmm.
do that enough, and then once your stuff gets picked up, you're like, okay, why did they pick this one up? You look at your peers and you're like, why did their stuff get picked up? And you just start to pick up these little patterns
Mm-hmm.
and bring them into your process. And once you kind of get more practice, then
Yeah.
you eventually, hopefully, are able to kind of bring your own sort of flair to it.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, I think for me, I started off at a place where, English is actually my second language.
Mm-hmm.
I when I went to kindergarten, I like did not know any English. All the kids knew the alphabet, and I was like,
Aww.
"What the heck is happening?" and then um, and then, yeah, I don't know how I ended up in writing, but I never thought I was a good writer. And
Mm,
then you just do it long enough and you
yeah.
fail long enough, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually you get to a point where you're like, actually, like, I've learned a few things. And it kind
Yes.
of takes that perspective for you to look
Mm-hmm.
back to finally be like, oh, I landed in a place that all those little failures, all those little rejections, all the things that were bumps along the way, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges actually helped me hone my skills to where I am today.
Yeah, I love it. See, I think you were always meant to give that talk. It sounds like from early on, you were just okay to like get out there and try and fail and get up and try again. And it is a mindset shift in a society where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, looking at, Insta Perfect lives and not seeing behind the curtain. It reminded me, and I want to share the quote because we talked about it before we went live, was the Nelson Mandela quote. I think you just live it. It's like, he says, I never lose. I only win or I learn something. And that's like really it. It's like, okay, it's not that I have to lose, just because it didn't go the way I
Yeah.
wanted doesn't mean that it was a total loss. Now, unless you're like a brain surgeon, then maybe that might be an issue, but we aren't doing brain surgery here. So it's like, okay, I can pick myself up, dust myself off, and say, what
Yep.
did I learn? And then you become better over time. Again, that persistence is going to beat any resistance thrown your way. I love it. Our live listeners are already writing down. You're already getting quoted again.
Aww.
It's on her
Well,
desk now.
I can't take credit for it because I stole it from someone else
I love it.
who, I
It's all
don't know,
good.
maybe stole it from someone else. So,
You're bringing it back around. You're bringing it back
yeah.
around. I love it. All right. So let's talk about a little bit of how did your experience in traditional media outlets like the LA Times, ABC, and NPR influence your approach to creative content at Salesforce? Because I think sometimes we forget ourselves and that like that outside perspective or a fresh perspective from different areas or different walks of life actually do add to the equation.
Yeah. So I think through news, you're constantly thinking about what do people care about? What do they find interesting? Why is this interesting? And am I covering it in a way that's different from what's already been covered before? So I
Mm-hmm.
remember like when I was early on in my career, I would pitch a story and they'd be like, "Did you look that up in the
Yeah.
past? Have we written
Archives.
about it before? What
Mm-hmm.
have other people written about it? How are you moving this story forward and how are you, kind of bringing a different angle, whether through your writing or through your reporting or through the different sources that you're bringing into the story?"
And it's funny to hear it because it reminds me of a strategist that I used to work with. I don't even know exactly what his initial background was, but he became like the head of strategy at our agency over a time. And that was his favorite thing to ask everybody was, why should anybody care about this? Or why would anybody care about this? And it was interesting because every time he asked it, it actually ruffled some people's feathers. It's like, because they took it personally, like, because it's a brand and I do work on it and everybody should care about it because I care about it. It's like, no, that's a really great question. We are bombarded by content on a daily basis. Like how can you make people pay attention and care? That's an important thing no matter what kind of, content you're putting out into the world as well. It also kind of briefly reminds me of another talk I went to at a conference that is now no longer called Brandemonium. And he talked about how much are you contributing to the pollution of the mind and the world of content by just
Oh,
putting out garbage?
wow.
I was like, dang, dude, you're going for the jugular, but I get what you're saying. Like, I totally, if it's not something that is going to stop people in their tracks and make them care and pay attention, like, we're just adding to the fray, you know,
Yeah.
of this constantly building content. And now that we got AI to help us with it, oh, good God, it's just getting, that's a whole nother conversation now.
I'm curious, how did you answer that question? Because I don't know how I would answer that question.
I said guilty. I said guilty because I know that, like, in my past self, junior copywriter Amy thought, that my brands and the things that I were working on were the most, prevalent and important things in the world. And you kind of have to, right,
Hmm.
to really lean into want to solve the problem with your creativity. So yeah, no, I was like, yeah, guilty. But it definitely made me think moving forward, okay, I have to be more intentional about what I'm pumping out into the world.
Yeah.
Um, and more thoughtful, and really more helpful, instead of just
Yeah.
putting out garbage for the sake of talking to myself. I had another creative director that had another very semi offensive term that I won't say, even though I usually say a lot on this podcast, but I won't say. Yeah, he just was like, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's so hard not to say it. But it's one of those
Just
things where it's more
say it.
about brands pleasing themselves, basically, and like the
Oh,
human
okay.
way that people
Got
like to
it.
please themselves. He's like, oh, that's brand. And I was like, dude, but I understand what he's saying. It's again, it's like, when you kind of forget your audience, you forget yourself and you're really kind of,
Yeah.
putting out a bunch of junk. So yeah, no, I love that lens. And I honestly think as marketers, you know, we have a duty and a responsibility to our customers and the people that we're trying to help with whatever product or service we're providing to make sure that it's thoughtful and intentional and truly right and
Hmm.
helpful. But yeah, Yeah. Anyways, it could be like a whole nother episode.
Yeah, I'm like, I always approach it almost through like the opposite side where I'm like,
Hmm.
nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I don't know what this says about me. I'm like, nobody
Ah.
cares about what I'm doing. Like, why
Uh-huh.
would they care about this? So it's almost like with every project, it's a little
Yeah.
bit of proving myself and saying like,
Hmm.
hey, let me make it so beautiful, so
Yeah.
amazing that it like can't be ignored.
Hmm. No, I love that. That's great. I think that's where, like, coming from a place of humility is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Knowing that you've got something to prove versus, like, crashing in and being like, yes, I deserve your attention. It's like,
It's that
nope.
chip on my shoulder.
I know, right? You didn't have that advertising kid chip on your shoulder.
No, unfortunately, when you come from journalism, there's a lot of like you get immediate feedback on the internet.
Oh my gosh, right? You can't be precious. That was another thing I loved from another boss of
Yeah.
mine. Be passionate, but not precious. And I'm like, you
Yep.
are so right. That saves me a lot of sleepless nights and makes all of the feedback that you get, a little bit easier to take. All right,
Hmm.
let's get into the Salesblazer project. And I would love for you to share a little bit about what the initial vision was and how did it evolve from the first iteration?
Yeah. So, man, take me back. So we launched Salesblazer almost 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago at this point.
Wow.
And the intention was how can we create the largest, most successful sales community to help professionals out there learn new skills, connect with each other, and grow their career. That was
Mm.
essentially, like, in a nutshell, our goal.
Easy
So we,
peasy.
yeah, easy peasy, you know?
Not hard.
Our CEO basically challenged us and he's like, hey, do this and do this better than everyone else and do it now.
Hmm.
And so that's how it started. Um, and and yeah, sorry.
No,
Well,
you're fine. How did it
yeah.
evolve? So where did you guys kind of come across your first hiccup? Or kind of, I'm trying to like dig into like the picture that you painted for your talk too.
Yeah. Well, even before Salesblazer started,
Hmm.
kind of that quintessential idea or that vision was something that we had been trying to achieve for years, right?
Hmm.
And so a previous iteration of Salesblazer was this project called Think Outside the Quota. And essentially, we were going to be the next Marvel franchise for salespeople. We were saying
I
like
love it. I've seen
everybody
those
was going to
briefs.
love this thing. We're going to have movie after movie after movie. And yeah, it didn't work out that way.
Hmm.
But we got some great speakers along the way. We worked with Tony Hawk, Damon John, and we thought this thing was just
Sounds expensive.
amazing. Yeah, expensive, very expensive. Um, and our goal was like, okay, prestige, that'll bring people in, right?
Mm.
People who other people respect and are
Hmm.
excited to learn from. Um, and yeah, like that didn't necessarily bring in the people that the amount of people that we were expecting for the amount that we put in, right? The
Hmm.
effort, the resources, all of that. And so, when our CEO kind of pitched this vision, we're like, hey, we're doing this. This kind of exists. And like, don't you think this kind of fits the bill? And he's like, no, no, not even close.
Like, well, we tried.
And so that's kind of how Salesblazer was born, is through that failure of learning, we really need to get back to our roots, understand what
Mm.
we're good at, what people actually want from us, what's unique about us,
Yeah.
um, and how we can serve and solve their problems
Mm.
specific to them, um, that we could actually solve their problems well versus what
Yes.
we hope to solve their problems with.
Right. This is such a common marketing, like, I don't want to say faux pas, but just like a common pitfall, I guess maybe is more the word, right? And that
Hmm.
it does when it happens, when we make the product, the service, or the company that makes it the hero. And then in this sense, you guys literally tried to make You're all the hero. We are Marvel. And it's like, well, you know what? The people that are trying to close deals day in and day out in the midst of everyday life, they know that that's not realistic for them. That's not actually
Mhm.
coming in to solve the problem. It sounds like you're going to fly in, do the thing, and then fly out, and you're not like a consistent trusted partner and ally. That's not community either, is what I
Mhm.
would say. But it is so
Mhm.
hard, right? You don't want to ever question those that are so far above you. You're like, that's outside my pay grade. But
Yep.
I mean, I would have to say that it's probably insurmountable the amount of time and money that a lot of companies that I've even worked for have spent, as an agency creative director, sort of chasing down those more idealized, visions of what something could be versus what it should be, because we forget the customer is the hero and that we're
Yep.
trying to solve problems for them, and you just can't always fit a square peg in a round hole. So if you're not constantly asking throughout the process, how are we making this better for the customer? How are we solving the problems that maybe we can't even see that they're having?
Yep.
Then what's the point? What's the
I
point?
I think with Think Outside the Quota, it was a little bit about like how do we build a fandom and the
Yeah,
community will
sure.
center around this fandom for this
Mm-hmm.
franchise, right? But it's like
Sure.
how many people out there really like are you going to watch a digital marketing TV series
Right.
essentially and
Uh-huh.
like become such a fan over like 10 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
like, and is that fandom gonna translate into true community where you're
Yeah.
helping and solving each other?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was kind of some of the thinking. Maybe we kind
Yeah.
of turned it on its head when we moved into Salesblazer.
Right. Yeah, it also makes me think about, right? We talk about like the hero's journey. I'm thinking in like terms of storytelling and then like the different archetypes. It's funny how sometimes it's like you can just put yourself as a brand into the wrong space, right?
Hmm.
Into the wrong character. And then trying to play a role that maybe others aren't seeing, or just the fact that like, yeah, I go to Disney Plus or wherever I go to watch and stream entertainment for the sake of entertainment. And it's like you've kind of forgot the desired outcome for the idea or the ideal, like where you want to be. And I
Yeah.
do truly think, again, as being, somebody who's constantly working to build and grow and really maintain community, for me, it requires vulnerability. So
Hmm.
I think there's nothing to say that you guys couldn't ever get to that like Marvel status, but like
Hmm.
the way the characters in Marvel got to where they are was you saw Peter Parker, lose Uncle Ben, you saw Iron Man have his fraught relationship with his dad. I mean, they all have, vulnerabilities in their story that have been shared and shown. And it's like, if
Yeah.
you're not kind of building that trust and relationship, like you're not going to get to that hero status either. Sorry if you're not a Marvel nerd or nerdy enough to know anything that I'm talking about right now, but hey.
I mean, I think that's true of entertainment, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering, like, is that true of like business?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do people want to build fandoms around business? I mean, I would say for Salesforce, they've done a
Mm-hmm.
pretty successful job with our
Mm-hmm.
Trailblazer community.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why that was successful was because it focused on the community, putting the community first.
There you
And
go. Exactly.
and I think with this series in particular, it was like, let's focus on the building the franchise and the
Hmm.
IP first
Yes.
versus let's focus on building the community first.
Oh,
And so
100%.
like that's kind of where we switched and
Hmm.
transitioned when we moved into Salesblazer is like, okay, the community comes first. What do they actually care about? What do they actually want from us? How can we
Yes.
listen to that and kind
Hey.
of build from there?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Listening is huge in that respect. And then knowing how to respond accordingly and just, yeah, get your house in order.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I think people think that they're just like, yeah, it's like build it and they will come. No, not exactly. You really got to
Mhm.
make sure that you're listening and responding to show that you're in alignment with what they're willing to walk in the door for. It's a lot
Yep.
to get people's attention. It's a lot to keep people engaged and a part of a community. But I would say, Salesforce is a brand. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't know, in this industry, what Salesforce and
Yeah.
who Salesforce is. And you guys have an amazing product. So like that is such a great place to start. And we think, turning it around, I'm kind of curious, like Was there like a kind of pivotal or specific point in which you guys are like, okay, like this idea is done. We need to kind of move into like shifting our focus and our attention? Was there any kind of like specific point, or did it just slowly kind of evolve through conversations?
I mean, yeah, it kind of came down to like, I think as many decisions sometimes come from top down, right? They see
Mm-hmm.
a need for the business and they're like, hey, solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
What you're currently doing isn't solving the problem. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where it came through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where too, sometimes we get a little backwards. It's like, I have a business need, so I'm going to go impose that business need on my customers to like somehow make up and manufacture a need that they don't really have, instead of constantly looking at your customers and saying, there's a need that they have. Let's grow our business by meeting that need.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of where it comes from, right? Like
mm-hmm.
he's talking to customers all the time. I mean, like our CEO and
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah.
they're talking to
Mm-hmm.
customers all the time on
That's
these
good.
calls. They're hearing from them and saying like, they're saying you're in the perfect position to offer this to us. You've been in sales
Ah,
for
that's
20 plus
good.
years. Why aren't you giving this to us? Give it to
Yeah.
us.
Oh my gosh. Come on. We're asking for it. That's amazing. That's a
Yeah.
great position to be in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When people are asking for it and looking for it. Because again, I think something like community, I mean, I'm hoping that over the next few years, especially, I feel like there's just been more conversation about community as of late, especially with the
Hmm.
start of the year, because people need it, more than
Yep.
ever. We feel more isolated than ever whenever, whatever we're doing, work in life. And I think, once you understand the power community holds and the ways in which it can propel you forward, and then all of us at the same time forward, then you're like,
Yep.
oh, I didn't. People say this about Together Digital so many times over and over. This is the thing that I didn't know that I needed. I don't
Yep.
know if your Salesforce people probably feel that way, or Salesblazer people feel that way, but I can only imagine, because I've worked a minute in sales and it's just so hard,
It's
and it's
really
the
tough.
right rejection after rejection. You talk about resilience and persistence. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot for to be said for that. And so to have community and know that you're not alone in that like endeavor and struggle, but then you can also have people to like celebrate, and that will
Yeah.
celebrate with you your wins, because also sales can be highly competitive. I really, really love this idea. I'm so glad that you guys went off and did this. So I'm kind of curious, once you decided, okay, hey, the customers are asking for this, what were some of the things that
Hmm.
you guys put into practice or into play within Salesblazer that had a lot to do with your customer feedback?
Yeah. So I would say like the biggest components of this program are content, community, and product, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our customers were coming back and saying, hey, why is it so hard to figure out and get my questions answered? Is there one place for me as a salesperson to come
Mm-hmm.
through? So we had that for admins and developers, right? Like Trailblazers, all dedicated towards admins and developers of Salesforce. But the end users, a lot of the end users are in sales.
Yeah,
And we didn't necessarily have that same community for the salesperson.
gotcha.
And so it really centered from that idea. How do we bring it all together? We
Mm-hmm.
created a central hub where we could bring the best of Salesforce into one place. We integrated Salesblazer into the product where we were
Perfect.
like, hey, look at these resources that are available to you.
Yeah.
And then we built a community online and in person where folks could come together, not only talk about how to solve their problems within Salesforce, but also it was really about professional growth, right? How could we all grow together and
Mm-hmm.
share the knowledge, get to know each other, and be each other's kind of partners
Yeah.
as we go through this journey? And probably the part of this program that keeps me going is when I meet sales blazers in real life or
Mm-hmm.
over Slack, and
Yeah.
they're like, thank you so much for putting this program together. Like, I met so many people. I've, expanded my network, or I found a
Mm-hmm.
new job.
Yeah.
So it's been incredible to kind of see not only the macro picture of the
Mm-hmm.
numbers coming in, but
Yeah.
also on the person to person level, you could see the impact happening in real
Yeah.
life.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that does feel good, right? Those fringe benefits of community are like just priceless. They're absolutely priceless. And it's like cool to know that, by building and creating and facilitating community, there's like an abundance now of like opportunities and positive things happening for people that otherwise without the community would just not have ever come to fruition. I don't think we forget that we need each other sometimes more than
Yeah.
we do. I love that. And I agree with you, kind of going from that online to offline and seeing in those relationships, and meeting
hmm
people. It's such a cool feeling. I love it.
Yeah, it almost feels like a class reunion sometimes at
Yeah.
our events because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these folks meet for the first time
Yeah.
at these events, and
Mm-hmm.
but they've been like chatting online for a while,
Oh yeah.
and so it's pretty cool to see those reunions.
Uh-huh. It's interesting too in this era of remote and hybrid where people seem to think that it's like, oh, I can't make professional or adult grown-up friends, through channels like these or communities. And I'm like, "Yeah, guys, like we've got people who meet and fall in love online and get married. Like, do you not pay attention to the online
Yeah.
dating world? Like, I can't think of any bigger, like more potential long-term commitment than that. So I'm like, why couldn't you form these bonds and relationships? And I mean, it sounds like they're happening all the time with the Salesblazer crew and then definitely here within our community as well. So I love, love, love it. All right, let's go back to a little bit of talking about mindset and a framework that you've talked about and shared that how you look at setbacks as opportunities.
Yeah. Dive into that question a little bit more. Like what do you hope to learn?
Right. So I think the key to this question is, you have the best of intentions, you're doing the work you think the way you should, and then like say somebody comes in and says, this is not what I wanted, this is not what I expected, or you get told no by somebody that is integral to making the thing happen. Like if you can think of an example, maybe it's more for like give us an example question of like how you've gotten a setback kind of thrown in your face and how you've
Yeah.
been able to turn it into an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was the word framework that kind of threw me
Threw you
off.
off.
Like I don't know if
We'll
there's
devolve what you're sharing into maybe a framework.
yeah, I don't know if there's an official framework,
Yeah.
It's like
Yet.
you encounter a setback,
Hmm.
um, and I'm like, what are the steps that you do? You just like you think about you take a step back, you look at
Hmm.
the vision. Are we all still trying to get to that vision?
Hmm.
Okay, so then what do we learn from this setback?
Hmm.
And how can we take that forward with us and constantly continue to experiment and push forward to get to that vision?
Hmm.
I think for me with Salesblazer, it was, learning after learning after learning, right? And I think that phrase as I've been in tech, the longer I'm in tech, I'm like, oh yeah, like fail fast
Yeah.
because then you really do like learn very, very quickly
Hmm.
and you're not spending so much of your time on a initiative
Hmm.
that or a project that won't necessarily get you to your ultimate vision.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like making sure you have that clear idea of where you're trying to get to,
Yeah.
um, and dusting yourself off
Hmm.
whenever something doesn't necessarily go your way, because it is an opportunity to learn.
Yep.
It's an opportunity to take that forward with you and kind of make whatever you're doing a little bit stronger. So I
Hmm.
guess that's the framework.
You see, I knew. I'm like, she's going to answer this, and we'll have it. And I feel like I'm seeing a little bit of that journalists come out in you again too, right? And I say this often. So it's like an official Amy quote of "Don't get furious, get curious." You're looking at
Yeah.
it and you're going, "Well, what is happening here? What's really happening here? Why have we become misaligned? What needs to be done, or how can we make this to where now we take this negative and work it into a more positive?" And so it's like almost like that who, what, where, when, why, how sort of
Yep.
approach. and you get curious and you ask more questions versus just getting angry, throwing your hands up and saying, this is the way it was supposed to go. This is the way it's always going to go. And I'm not going to bend or flex. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of it is also I'm like very stubborn and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like also single-minded towards like accomplishing what I
Yeah.
want to accomplish. And
Uh-huh.
I think that's also just part of my natural drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think how to make it executable for like it's just like yeah, you just have to keep trying, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Like for example, with think outside the quota, when we think we created the best thing ever and someone tells you, "No, that's terrible. Throw it
Yeah.
out." You just spent like a year working on it.
Yeah.
But as much as like you mourn the loss of the
Mm-hmm.
efforts that you put in and what you thought you accomplished, that those learnings help create Salesblazer, which
Yep.
ultimately led us to, project of the year and
Mm-hmm.
like $250,000 community
Yeah.
members. It's like it's like the scale of Salesblazer was nothing we could have even imagined
Oh, that's so
with
great.
think outside the quota. So
Yep. Yep.
um hopefully something's always better around the corner and you take
Right.
what you learn.
I love it. That's so great and super, super inspiring because I think you're right. It is hard when you spend, a year plus on something and it all kind of goes to the ground. But you're right. Like from those ashes comes something better, and I think always having that mindset of, okay, yeah, well, that was a good first draft of a year that I just spent on this first draft. But like, hey, that means the next one's going to be all the better. And I love that you're able to like quantify and qualify and see the results of all that hard work because it was all still the work, right? Like failing
Yep.
is a part of the process, folks. We have to remember it's
Yep.
not all about that perfection every time because you're not going to end up with an optimal product or service by the end of that, right? It's going to just kind of be subpar or okay. And clearly, the time and energy that you've put into it and the learnings that you've taken have been a big part of that success. And without that failure, there would have been no learning. So, love it. When it comes to community and creating content, the word authenticity gets thrown around quite a bit. Um, I'm kind of curious, how you have tried to work towards doing that, especially while scaling, because obviously you guys have grown quite a bit as a community and the amount of content you're doing has probably grown along with it. Yeah, what are some things that you're kind of putting into place to make sure that it stays true to, Salesforce and the vision and, for the community too, right? So they really truly feel that sense of
hmm
connection.
I think it's really just putting your community at the front, right, to maintain
Mm-hmm.
that authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, it's like if our goal is to really help sales professionals,
Yeah.
then we need to give them a platform. We need to
Mm.
give them the resources. Like, we need to be giving more than we're taking.
Yes.
And so, yeah, like if you look at our content, the vast majority of our content includes someone quoted from our community.
Yeah.
If you go into our Slack, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see like we're constantly engaging, answering questions, making sure that, you know, the dialogue keeps going.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also community driven, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have these community group leaders who are like, yeah, every quarter or every month, I'm going to throw my own Salesblazer event.
Right.
And that's
I
really
love it.
awesome to
They're
see that
embracing it.
progression, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just kind of goes back to it's like we could be as I guess our authentic goal is we want to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best way to achieve that is putting them at the front of that
Yeah.
and helping and then giving them
I've
stuff.
said it so many times before too, being someone who like my whole business is a community, right? And I'm constantly saying without you there is no me, and when it comes to community, the people within the community, they are the product, and so it can either be really good or really bad. And so it's one of those things that I think like authenticity and creating the right kinds of content that is reflective of, of the people that you're trying to help and support. All right. I want to remind our live listening audience that you all have the chance to jump in and ask questions just through the chat. So just open up your chat window and drop questions in if you have them. I've got one or two here left for you before we go into the power round. So I'm curious, what surprised you the most about the elements of Salesblazer that resonated the most with your audience? Was there anything that kind of fell into that facet?
You know, I know I shouldn't be surprised, but I am surprised constantly when, honestly, like when the community just wants to talk about a product. I'm like,
Yeah. It's so
because obviously
flattering.
I come from the perspective of like, oh, I'm always trying to get people to talk about our product.
Mm-hmm.
But like when it naturally comes and they have a natural passion for
Mm-hmm.
being that evangelist in their organization, or they have a passion for figuring out how to improve or learn best practices around developing um, processes or like, you know, just making how the product functions better in their organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's been inspiring to see people connect around that
Mm-hmm.
totally on their own. Like we may have created the working space,
Uh-huh.
but they're the ones directing the connections and the conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's really cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's probably the best part.
I love it. It is so good to hear when people are authentic. Okay, I can say this. I know it's Friday. Authentically advocate for your business because again, like their words, their testimonials, that's talk about total authenticity and
Yeah.
believability and building that loyalty and all of that trust, all these things that brands are constantly trying to work towards. Community is such a great way to get there, but you can't make it about you, right? It's like this weird
Mm-hmm.
backwards thinking. Actually, you're giving me ideas. Also, friends, those of you that are listening, total like slight segue. Content marketing world for 2025. They're speaking like applications are open. So, Melissa, I hope you're going to go apply because I think you should be on that stage again. And then all of our listeners, like, people need to be hearing from you too. So I'm going to encourage you all to check it out and apply. And I'm going to do the same because I'm not just going to tell everybody else to do it. I'm also going to do it. And actually, as we're talking, I'm getting ideas. So I might reach out to you and maybe we'll make it like a duo
Yes.
because this whole idea of community and how to do it right. And how to build loyalty through community by not putting yourselves kind of center stage. Yeah, my brain's like already building the PowerPoint in my head, so we can talk
I love it.
outside
Let's do
about
it.
it. And we can kind of bring those two different angles where it's like one really big kind of like company and brand, and then this other more
Mm-hmm.
kind of mission based. But there's still like as you're speaking, there's so many alignments and similarities in the ways in which we have managed to kind of maintain throughout a pandemic, nonetheless, a
Yeah.
very, very amazing and effective community that is truly making differences in people's, not just their careers, but their lives. And
Yeah.
it's like, but that's not without intention. That's not happening on accident. So I think, yeah, there's definitely opportunity for us to maybe collaborate together if you want.
Yeah, I would love to,
Yeah.
Amy. I mean, you've built such an amazing space for people. And
Thanks.
so,
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
it's
And again,
amazing to
it wasn't
see.
just me. It totally takes a village. So I can't take all the credit. It's like seriously, I'm a product of the community. I was a member first. So wouldn't even be sitting here owning and running a business, much less producing a podcast if it wasn't for the women that surround me, the amazing, intelligent, awesome women that surround me. So yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any questions yet into the in the chat, but I do see lots of they're ready to come and see our talk. That's good. That's exciting. All right. Well, let's get to the power round questions, and then again, folks, we usually go to about the hour. So if you've got a question that you want to ask, don't be shy. It's okay. We like questions, right? All right. We did get a question from Jillian. Thank you so much for asking. She wants to know, do you have any daily habits that help you succeed?
Ooh, daily habits. I don't know if this is daily.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, no, it is definitely not daily, but
That's
I
okay.
do think working out.
Yes. That's
So
great.
my New Year's resolution this year is
Uh-huh.
to work out 3 to 5 days a week,
Uh-huh.
previously from zero.
Hey, I like that it's a range too.
So, but what I've noticed, it's like been so hard to keep it up. But what I've
Mhm.
noticed is I tend to have more energy
Yes.
after
Mhm.
my workouts. I tend to be in a better mood, and
Mhm.
I I feel like I read more about working out than I actually work out. But they also to say like
Yes.
the science of working out is like it helps you be more productive and
Yeah.
helps you be more on top of things and more alert and whatnot.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess working out, I don't
I'm with
know.
you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Honestly, I have swapped the notion that I am working out for my physical health. I've said this is for my mental health. And honestly, it's
Yes.
easier for me to feel motivated, especially when I wake up and it's, 5 degrees outside and I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. But I'm like, I know
Yes.
this weather and the darkness is gonna just pull me down. If I go work out, I know at the end mentally I'm going to feel so much better and have so much more clarity. So I think that's a great
Yes.
answer. And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be killing yourself on any kind of crazy machines or some, excruciating workout. I mean,
Exactly.
hell,
It
it
could
could be getting out and
literally just
walking
be
around
a
the block.
walk.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%. Like, let's just not go from 0 to 60 because that's just setting yourself
Yes.
up for failure.
Oh, actually, the other thing I would say, morning routine. Like
Yes.
having a morning routine.
Oh, yeah.
I got into coffee. I was
Hmm.
never a big coffee person until last year.
Hmm.
And just like the routine of making your coffee in the morning, sitting down for breakfast, like
Yes.
giving yourself some space before you just roll into
Oh,
work.
100%.
For some reason, that really puts me in a good headspace before I do
Hmm.
anything for the day.
Yes, prime yourself for the day. One of my good friends, Lucretia, listening live, she already put some little clappy hands in there. She is like so great at morning routine, by the way. So as soon as you said that, I'm like, I can just feel her going, yes, morning routine. Because she does. She has her ritual. She shares lovely pictures about it on Instagram that I think probably help keep her accountable. At least that's how I sometimes use Instagram when I'm like, I did my calm app. I did
Yeah,
my meditation. I'm going to share it because I did it. Yay, me.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
it's
it
like,
really
it
does help.
really is that like, yay me feeling. It's like you could
Yes.
make your morning routine just brush your teeth.
Uh huh.
And like, you're like, I brush my teeth,
Oh
pat
my
myself on
gosh.
the back. That's
So
my morning
true.
routine.
One of my favorite talks was from I think he was a retired Army general who talked about why you should make your bed every morning and how, like, no matter how sideways the day goes, no matter what happens in that day, at the end of it, you come back to a bed that was made. And you're like, I might have gotten anything done today, but that bed was made. I have made my bed every day since. And it really does
Okay,
make a
gotta go
difference,
make my bed, which is like
right?
right next to me.
It does. It's so subtle. I'll have to find the talk and share it with you all. Maybe we can put it in the show notes. But I'm not going to lie. It really makes the difference. And the days that I come back and the bed's not made, I'm like, oh man, it wasn't
Yeah,
made. And that's usually because I left before everybody else was gone and the kids like came in and mussed up the bed or my husband was sleeping in.
yeah.
But anyways, all right, we got one more.
What are your daily habits to succeed? I'm
I
curious.
am with you on the working out. I fall on and off the wagon constantly like everybody else, but I do find that I have greater mental clarity, stamina, emotional stability, especially in the wintertime when I am working out because I am a nature nerd and I love the outdoors. And so when it's
Yeah,
cold and I can't get out in the sunshine, I definitely feel a difference. But yeah, no, that journaling, kind of on and off, especially I'm more seasonal. I definitely feel
yeah,
like I have more ritual and routine during this time of year. I live
yeah,
in Cincinnati, Ohio, so it gets darker
yeah,
earlier, it's colder. I'm getting less sunlight. So for me, like
yeah.
meditation, journaling, working out, I'm much better about being routine with those in the winter months. And then in the summer months, it's usually actually spending as much time as I possibly can outside. That would be my routine. It's like, how do I
Oh,
get
I
outside
love
today?
that. I love that.
Yeah, no, those are kind of my favorites. All right, it's funny because the next power on question, I'm going to mesh with Jillian's question here, and Julia, I'll get to your question too. Don't worry. I love that you guys are sending us so many questions. But Jillian wants to know, of course, do you have any AI tools that you use or would recommend?
Well, the tool that I don't think I can promote another company. I don't know if I
Oh
should
no, that's fair.
say.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Um, but yeah, we use some internal AI tools.
Okay.
Actually, you know what the best AI tool in my life is right
Yeah.
now? I just thought of it, and it's like kind of perfect, is Slack. Like, so
Yes, thank
Slack,
you.
I don't know, I don't use email anymore unless it's
Right?
with external people.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I need to do is in Slack.
Yep.
And then now I'm gonna sound like a corporate shell. I'm like, but honestly, like coordinating, collaborating,
Uh-huh.
our documents, like
Mm-hmm.
everything is in Slack. And it also has AI summaries
Yep.
where I don't have to read through all the messages I missed. I could just read the recaps,
Mm-hmm.
like, and then it also has integrations where
Yep.
like it'll tell me what I missed or like things that I need to do. So yes, that's the AI tool that I literally can't plan my day
I
without.
love it. I love it. That's so wonderful. I agree. Our Together Digital community is on Slack too. We've been on it since 2016 and, just leaps and bounds with the abilities, the integrations, the automations that just make life easier. All right. Julie
Yes.
had one more question and we'll end it there. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions or resources for portfolio development? She says most of my content is older and from sites that have since turned over, which honestly, that could have been a year or 2 years ago. I've worked on websites that were
Yeah.
huge lists and they're like, I go back and I'm like, you redesigned again? We spent a year and it lasted a year. In more recent years, I have been doing more long form copy, more for journalism and trade
Yeah.
publishing.
Well, I can say when I had a portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
well, okay, let me answer that question with the present. I honestly think LinkedIn is the best place for your portfolio now.
Oh,
Like, unless your role that you're applying to is like a creative role,
mm-hmm.
like LinkedIn is kind of where I go to first when I'm going through
Mm-hmm.
people's work and just
Yeah.
trying to see what they're talking about, what they've posted, what kind of projects that they've put up there to take a look at. Um, that being said, though, when I did have a portfolio outside of LinkedIn, I would say the problem that you're encountering is very common. For you have all this content that you've put out there that
Mm-hmm.
you have your name on that suddenly disappears from the internet. So if you can go to there's this website. What's it called? Uh, oh my God. Internet Archive. You can go
Yeah.
to Internet Archive,
Yeah.
put in that website, that link if you still have it,
Mm-hmm.
and see what the page looked like. You can copy that page. You
Yeah.
can take that content, put it onto your website,
Mm-hmm.
and just do like a screenshot so you have that proof that
Mm-hmm.
it did live somewhere at
Right.
some point.
It was real.
And then to answer your question, if your content is older, what if there is something stopping you from, publishing newer stuff, like ask yourself, what is that thing that's stopping you? Because
Mm-hmm.
I will say, as I'm evaluating, I do look for what have you done most recently.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
just some thoughts for you. Hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, I think there's like a website, time machine site too. I'll have to dig that up and put it in the
Yes.
show notes, where you can kind of find things like that and go back and kind of see the site as it existed. But yeah,
Yes, Wayback
way
Machine.
back.
That's what
Thank you.
it's
I was like, somebody's gonna
called.
come in and save us here.
Yeah. And then
The power of community.
if you need permission from your publishers, my recommendation would be put your website, certain pages of your website behind a password protected page.
Mm,
And that way it's not, you're doing it for
not
interviews.
public.
No one's coming after you for republishing something.
It's a great strategy, Melissa. I love that. That's a perfect idea. Yeah. You're sending it to specific people. You're not blasting it across the internet. Just make it password protected and then you don't have to worry about them kind of getting their hands on it. Great strategies.
Yeah.
All of this, the mindset, hearing your story, learning more about you. It's been so much fun. Thank you so much again for showing up and being with us today.
Thank you, Amy, for inviting me. This was a lot of fun and
Right?
can't wait to do our presentation at Content Marketing
I
World.
know. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm so excited. It was really good this year. I was kind of nervous at coming out of Cleveland and going to the West Coast, and it's like, is it going to feel different? But the people are all the same, and they're so
Yeah.
lovely. And
Yeah.
we have such a blast, and there's such a great micro community, and all the Amy's, all the Amy's that are
Oh
there.
my God, so many Amy's.
It's kind of weird. I know it's not like that special of a name, but it's just I've never been in the same room as so many Amy's. But on that note, we'll call it a day. Thank you again so much for being here with us. Thank you to our listeners for joining and asking your very thoughtful and amazing questions. We always appreciate you, our listeners, and those who ask. Next week, come back and see us again. Same time, same bat channel. We're going to be talking about social media, sanity, and you. And this is one of our members, Robbie Schneider, who basically took a goal last year with our authentic ambition goal setting cohort and took her experience in healthcare and mental health and social media and created a book out of it. So we're excited to dig into that with her, celebrate her, and learn more how to manage social media in our sanity. All right, everyone, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next week. Until then, keep asking, keep giving, and keep growing.
Produced by Heartcast Media.